Hi everyone, this is Freddie with Superbike Unlimited, and today we've got another update on our KTM 450 SMR project. It's been a really long time since we've done anything with this bike, largely because of all the racing stuff I've been doing. I really haven't ridden it. Rode it one time this year, but we've got some stuff coming up soon where should have some time to ride it, and we've got some really cool parts in. So without further ado, we're going to show you some of these Spider parts we've got. This is basically an assortment of products by a company called Spider Off-Road that specializes essentially only in Supermoto components. And in my opinion, they have some of the nicest stuff we've ever seen for this segment. And today we're doing like a full upgrade package on our bike from these guys, and I really think we're going to get some tangible benefits. So we're just going to go through this stuff bit by bit. First up, we've got these foot pegs. So there's a couple of different options from them, and I'll show you the other ones in a minute, but this is their monoblock foot peg, which is a solid CNC machined piece, as you can see, super nice looking. And the major benefit to this is it's 12 mils taller than a standard peg. The slider is integrated into the end of it. That's actually a replaceable Delrin slider. And so you don't give up that ground clearance, and it's also 12 mils back. So this is going to give a much more aggressive feel, and you're not going to be giving up the ground clearance. You may recall that I designed a link for our bike, and one of the concepts of that link was to make the bike taller. And while I really liked it, it also made the bike feel kind of edgy, and you really had to be like going fast to make the bike feel good. If you were off pace, the bike just didn't feel great because of how tall it was. It wasn't loaded up enough. So it'll be nice to have these pegs. I won't feel like I have to do that so much. And there's going to be more on that in a minute, but moving on, they also have these really triple clamp set. This kit is kind of like a Superbike triple clamp set because it has a full range of inserts, you can see here. So instead of like the X-Trig and all the other stuff out there that actually has adjustable offset, and many are fixed, most of them just have two options, typically 14 and 16 mils. With this, we can take the top nut off here, and we can change the inserts, and we have a whole range. And actually we can go down lower than what's shown here, but essentially we have from out of our current range 11 to I think 18. I don't remember what maybe 11 to 17. So yeah, 17. So we can actually go down to 10. I don't know what the minimum is, but I don't have that. I don't think we're going to need to go that low, but something else we're going to do. And along with that, we're going to go ahead and try these. This is something that we've seen people talk about, and I'm not really entirely sure what it's going to feel like, but what this is a set of rake cups. So essentially those get pressed into the steering head, and they alter the rake. So we're going to be able to move the front of move the fork in or out. So offset essentially is if you have a center line from your fork cap here to the center line of the stem, the distance between those two is your offset. Rake is actually the angle, so if we've got it like this, if we kick it in or out like that, that's rake angle. So in this case, we're looking at a set of cups that would bring these in about a degree. That's going to really reduce trail. So what we would do then is decrease offset here, which will actually get our trail back into like a normal window. We want that trail to be in a certain range because the bike will start feeling really nervous and kind of like unstable if you go too low on trail. Moving on, the next bit that we've got these really nice chain adjusters and sliders. I just really like those, so we're going to use those. And then we have this Super Trick linkage kit. This also comes with these inserts. These allow for an adjustable ride height essentially. By installing these here in this slotted area, you can change the rear geometry, raise it up or down. And the idea with this is just to kind of do a similar thing that our link did and just produce more grip. The general concept of these links is they don't have so much of a rising rate where as the shock compresses, the rate of the link progresses really aggressively, because like the standard link on these bikes is essentially a motocross link. It's not something tuned for tarmac use. This is. So it's going to have a much better feel on tarmac with like a sticky tire. And then to accompany that, we've done a nice little upgrade kit to our work spec TTX flow here. And then we've done some valving changes that I think will nicely suit the setup of this linkage. And we have an adjustable end eye on here. So this allows us to actually adjust ride height. Super cool piece, something you can add with this kit if you buy it for either an Öhlins or a WP shock. So all this is going to go together as a nice little complimentary package. And then lastly, I'll show you these other foot pegs. We showed these in our other video on the KTM 500 that we're doing, but This is the adjustable foot peg. This one, similar concept to the other, a little bit of a different aesthetic. There you go. But the main concept here is they don't go back, but they do have the ability to go to a standard height more or less, or up 12 mils, and they still feature that low profile design and replaceable slider. So a lot of the benefits, and these are actually a little bit cheaper. So if you're not sure if you want the height, this might be a good option for you. They cost less than the monoblock version, and they have that height adjustment. So those are really cool. That's what I'm running on my 500 right now. Really like these. I just want to try these out for comparison. So we'll see how they go. Next up, we're going to start stripping this stuff off and doing the install. All right, so this is coming along. You can see we've got our link out. This is the one that we made at the shop here. And man, I always forget how much of a pain it is to get the shock out of these things. We always loosen the subframe bolts and take out the upper exhaust mount bolts to kind of pivot the subframe up a little, and it helps you pull it out the other side. So something I'm just going to touch on, because I didn't make any comments about this, is we're taking out a laner. I think it's called an Impact 18 shock. I tested this because there was a while that MTR was using these, and I just wanted to see what it was all about. It's not a bad shock. I think it worked pretty well. I went back and forth with the owner of the company in Italy and told them very specifically the settings and stuff that we wanted and the range. And I feel like he did a pretty good job of setting it up. That being said, I can't say I would recommend the shock. The main reason is they're way too expensive in the US. They cost well over $2,000. And they, the support just isn't there. The company that supports these in the US, they're small. I found that they're not the most responsive, and I don't want to pull any punches, but I'm also not trying to throw anybody under the bus. I would probably just stick to the old ones. I feel like the support is better, way better product availability and parts availability, and we have full settings banks and shim stacks and all this stuff developed for these. So I think that our experimentation with the laner has come to a close. So if you want one, we've got a great one for you. It's only got a few vents on it, but probably not going to use those anymore. And something else I just wanted to touch on, we actually never mentioned this in the other video. We are currently using an MTR swing arm. The reason I switched to this is primarily because with our texture arm, which I really liked, when I ran the increased swing arm angle that our link necessitated, it was driving our chain into the chain slider at an insane rate, like going through a slider every event, because I had like an extra 1.5 degrees of swing arm angle, which really puts the chain straight into the swing arm. So, you know, I was just trying some superbike concepts on a supermoto. Probably not the best move. Didn't work out as well as I thought it would, and those were some of the issues. That being said, I could still run that setup with this swing arm, and I didn't have those problems. No issues whatsoever. So this is a nice swing arm. I really like it. It's a little heavier than the texture one, but to be honest, I think that it has some benefits. It seems to be a little bit nicer in terms of fit and finish, and I like the chain slider they come with and how it has the built-in guard that stops the chain from moving laterally. That's a nice piece. So next, we're going to start mounting up the other stuff, and we will see how it looks. All right, so Martin's going to be putting the shock in. While he's doing that, I'll just show you this little bushing concept here. Obviously, this works like the the standard link arm, and you're just going to press in the insert that you want. We're going to go with the 0, so just get the orientation correct, and which I think I did not, and press in the insert that you're going to want to do, which we'll do that now. Okay, so we got some of this on. Sorry I didn't show you all that. It's not particularly exciting, honestly. We're just swapping the parts out. Everything goes on as the original, and I actually helped a bit. So Martin was working on getting this axle set up with the chain adjusters, because that is a thread-in axle, and we have the titanium Warp 9 axle, so all that looks good. With our linkage, I actually wound up using the OEM bushing and outer collars on the part that goes into the shock, just because the bushing kit that came with it was just really tight, and I think we might have been able to make it work, but it was just tighter than I cared for. So I decided to just swap those parts out, and it went in super easy in comparison. So yeah, just something to point out. You can see, I'll show what I'm talking about here. So that's the link we pulled out, and you can see this is the setup they provided, which was just aluminum caps with a bushing on the inside, and it was like a 1/10 of a millimeter or so, maybe a little more than that, wider than the OEM setup. So just made for a really tight fit. So, and the OEM ones being rubber, even if they're a little large, they're more malleable, whereas that's got no give. So I just went ahead and swapped that around. So that all looks pretty good. I'm pretty excited to have Olin's back on the bike, and super excited to test out this new setup. I think it looks really good. Really fine attention to detail. It's a nice looking piece. So next we're just going to torque everything down and we will move to the front. Okay, next we're going to do these foot pegs, and I just wanted to do a quick comparison. So we've got the Spider with the slider and everything, weighs in at 127 grams. And then this is our Warp 9, which honestly not a bad foot peg for the money. 193 grams. So about 66 grams saved per peg. That's a nice savings, aside from the fact that we're gaining so much ground clearance. I mean, just looking at those, you're going to be able to see a huge difference. I mean, that's crazy looking. But yeah, we're going to have a lot more ground clearance. Excited to try these on the racetrack. All right, and so when you pull the stock one out, it looks like Martin's literally just pressing that spring in with his finger, and it lines up nice and easy. A little bit of force required. Like I said, nice and easy. Didn't even have to struggle. It was very easy. That spring takes a little bit of force, so just be careful. And whenever you're taking the pin out, you might want to put something over it because they have a tendency to fly out. So just something to keep in mind. All right, so we're getting ready to strip down this front end and do some of this converting to our Spider kit. And I just wanted to make a couple of comments. Right now, of course, we're using this Trig Clamp set. And to be honest, it's not a bad set. I've always liked Trig. You know, they're, to be fair, one of the earlier and most widely available Supermoto clamp sets out there. They make a lot of parts to make the kit fit. So nothing against Trig, but the one thing I will say about these that I've never liked and that I'm excited to try something new is that, for one, I think they have too much flex for a Supermoto concept. Essentially, their Supermoto clamps are the same as their Moto clamps, and inevitably the feel is different between those two worlds. And the other thing is, I don't like that they use these little elastomers that go on the bar mounts. These guys right here, you know, so you've got this little bushing that essentially is absorbing feel and force from the front end before it gets to your hands. I don't really want that. I'd rather feel everything the front tire is doing. You know, maybe in a moto world that makes sense because you're numbing everything through dirt and stuff, but with tarmac, I want to feel where my front tire is at. So I think it's going to be better to get rid of that setup. If we had kept these, we're going to make some bushings out of aluminum anyway. And then lastly, the other thing I was just going to reference, I don't know why they don't anodize these IDs of the fork clamps, because I feel like raw aluminum like that has a far greater chance to gall an anodized surface like a fork tube. I don't really see it happening very often, but we do find that there's a little more wear with a non-anodized surface like this on our forks. So just something I don't really like when you compare that to these. It looks nicer, but also it's just better for the mating surfaces. So anyway, just a quick comparison. You can see that obviously the design of these, they're meant to flex. Design of these, not a lot of flexion happening there. They're super beefy, so I think that's going to be a good thing, more feel. All right, so this video is not going to get released before New Jersey, and so you're going to be seeing this after New Jersey because we broke one of the tapered races. So that's okay. I probably beat on it too hard with the driver. We use an aluminum driver like this to get them started in there, and it probably just had a little bit of a weak spot right where the little indicator is here, and so that one's broken. We don't have one for the bottom to go in, so we're gonna have to wait for another one to come in. It's probably gonna get here start of the week, so we're gonna try to wrap that up and hopefully get to take this bike to the track and test out some of these goodies in about a week and a half's time. So assuming all this stuff shows up, and if it doesn't, what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and put the stock stuff back in there and not run this head angle bit. But yep, unfortunately for the time being, we're not going to progress this any further. But the good news is for you guys, it's going to feel like a matter of seconds before we get started again. For us, it's about a week. For you, it's the magic of the internet. It's just going to be a few seconds. So we'll pick this back up once the new parts come in. All right, so we've got some more updates coming for this thing that are kind of last minute, but I'm super excited. And just in case the video looks strange today, I left the GoPro stuff in my carry-on bag from going to the track. So sorry about that. We're doing iPhone shots today. I think we'll still probably look okay. But let's just walk you over here and show you some of the stuff that we're going to be installing. So we've actually got an exciting new partnership with a company called PZ5 Cobra. They make this braking system. This is a single disc system. Billet monoblock caliper. This is all billet aluminum, one piece, and a billet master cylinder, integrated reservoir, as you can see. Super nice setup. This is a 16 by 16 master. The piston size in this, I think it's 28 by 4. I need to double check that. It's a much smaller piston setup than I'm used to, and I was kind of concerned about that, but they said just try this, trust us. These guys have been racing an S1 GP forever, so willing to give them the benefit of the doubt there. And then this is the brake disc they want us to try. This is a 310 by 5.5 disc. You know, pretty standard floater, but you know, nothing too special, just a nice looking billet carrier. What we're gonna do is compare the weight of all this stuff to what we're taking off. Currently I'm running a 305, that's a 6 mil, so a little bit of a different config. To be honest, I would like to run a smaller disc, but I wanna test this stuff as they've sent it. They also included these pads, just to make it a true apples to apples comparison. I'm gonna run these Vezra pads, same pad shape as what this caliper takes, and this is the compound I've been using on my biting caliper. I like the way it feels, and I want to have a true, proper comparison, and not have a pad be like a factor in why I like or dislike something. So we're doing that. And yeah, next we're just going to take off all this biting stuff and get us all mounted up and compare. All right, while Martin's prepping everything for install, I'm just going to start weighing some components here so we can have an actual comparison of before and after weight savings or potential addition. So the caliper with no pads and the little this little guy, I need to pull that out. It's probably a gram or so. $590 grams. We'll say 591 because it keeps kind of bouncing around. 344 grams for the master. Okay, this is a really beautiful way to measure this. Got this ugly hunk of shit piece of wood on here. So, but it doesn't matter, it's taired properly, we can check that out. So that's 1.4 kilograms, 1,401 grams. All right, so we've got our baseline weights. We will now compare to the biting stuff that we're taking off and the Brembo with the reservoir. All right, so we've got our biting disc off, and you can see just kind of visually looking at those two, this thing's pretty, that's a beefy boy, as we say around here. It's very thick. It's a 6 millimeter, so half a millimeter thicker. It's only 5 millimeters smaller OD, but just the carrier alone, that's a much more material. You can just kind of see sort of the focus on lightness there. Anyway, comparing the weight, 1.5 kilos, that's 118 grams heavier. So that's a step in the right direction. If we get the same braking performance with this, obviously there is some consideration with the fact gyroscopic effect. This one's a smaller OD versus this one having a larger OD. Theoretically, that could have an impact on turning, but not really an issue with a motorcycle like this. So it's definitely a step in the right direction. All right, we've got our caliper, and I'm actually going to do a reweigh of the other with pads in. So for this one, we have some used Vezra pads, and we are 916 grams. This one, 828, so about 90 grams lighter. So again, pretty decent savings. That's almost 200 grams, I think, a little over 200 grams. So yeah, step in the right direction. Next, we'll have this master cylinder comparison done, and we'll start putting this stuff on. All right, with our Cobra, once again, this is with tie bolts, which we did swap in, but apples to apples, because that's what we did in the Brembo. We're looking at 341 grams. Okay. Okay, and the Brembo, as equipped with all the tie hardware and such, 409 grams, so approximately another 70 grams saved by switching to this other stuff. So looks like the PZ5 Cobra bits are definitely going to save us some weight. We just have to now confirm the braking performance. So we've got the caliper and rotor mounted up. You can kind of see the way that looks there. Honestly, I'm a huge fan of the way the caliper looks. I think it looks really aggressive. We're gonna have to adjust some spacing. Not quite centered there, so I'm gonna swap in a different disc spacer behind this the disc here and offset that disc just a little bit outward, probably about a mil. That should center it up nicely. I mean, honestly, we could still run it this way, but you want that to be as close to centered as possible, and you can see not even close. So we'll make that adjustment, and Martin will keep chipping away at the master cylinder. All right, we're back in action today. We didn't get this finished last night, so we're back in this morning. We do have the master cylinder mounted up. Show you what that looks like on the bar. Nice and tidy, and you can kind of see it's got a really large reservoir, which I like a lot. One thing I don't love about the Behringer is I feel that the height of the reservoir is a little shallow. These things tend to kind of foam a bit because of all the vibration, so I think it's good to have a decent reservoir volume, especially if it's going to be that close to the pickup. So this is, I feel like, a little bit of a superior design to the Behringer. Of course, we had no issues with the Brembo there because it's a decent sized reservoir, and then we had the tube going to it. But even that, I could see it's all clear. I could see that it would froth. So it'll be interesting to see how this works, but looks really good. I'm very happy with the aesthetic of everything. We're going to use the same line that we had. It looks like it's all going to work fine. Caliper honestly looks just badass. I love the look of that thing. Very aggressive looking. So now we're just going to bleed this, see how it feels, and I'll probably take it out in the parking lot and just kind of do like a bit of a feel out there just to see what it feels like. Make sure everything's cool. And then at the track, of course, we'll have to do a bit of a bed-in procedure. Fortunately, with Vezra brake pads, it's really easy. What they normally say is to just do a handful of laps at a moderate pace, 80% braking force. So I usually do that anyway, just because I always want to get up to speed kind of slowly if it's been a while, which it has been in my case. So we'll just take the bike out and do, you know, a session with only a handful of laps at like a moderate pace, just to get the idea is what you're trying to do with a brand new brake disc with a new compound. You get a good bit of that compound applied to the disc, and you'll see the disc will start to turn like a blue color, and then the performance of the brakes is going to come up substantially once you have that friction material bedded into the actual disc. It'll look kind of like this. You can see there's a distinctly blue finish to that relative to the way the other one looks. So it'll be the same way on this guy once we get that done. All right, guys, we've got this all mounted up and bled. Honestly, this thing was kind of a bitch to bleed. I don't know if that's just due to incompetence on my behalf. It wasn't. Martin is actually the guy that got it done, but I just couldn't really get it to bleed very well. We had to do some weird stuff with the angles. You know, obviously with a brake line, you don't want any high points and stuff like that when you're trying to get air out. So I basically, I took it out of the shroud here. We took this retainer off, and I zip tied the brake line so that it was sort of like more of a steady, graduating climb to this, so there wasn't a potential bubble stuck in here. We reverse bled it through the bleed nipple on the caliper and used our, you know, we have a, whatever they're called, Mighty Vac or whatever the thing is called that uses an airline. It's just tricky to bleed, but then I just wanted to take it for a spin in our parking lot, of course, because this isn't street legal, and just make sure everything was good, and it feels fine. The lever came in real nice, and I think just taking it for that spin and actually going through the gears, which was probably just first and second since it was in the parking lot, that sorted it out. And we got a little bit of the pad compound on the disc, so I was able to get a feel for what the actual brakes feel like, and they're very different from the biting setup. This setup, well, for one, the lever has a little bit of a later engagement point, so when you're pulling the lever here, there's this bit of sort of free play. I would say that right there is free play, and then from here it starts to bite, and then from here it's on fully. So it's just a different feel than what we had previously, which was a faster engagement point, and the piston size in this biting caliper is huge. This is like a Superbike configuration caliper. You can see those are some monstrous pistons in there, and what that translates to as a rider is a really direct and strong braking feel. And while I didn't mind that, it was something I had to kind of set the forks up around, because it's easy for me to get the tail of the bike in the air on corner entry for hard braking, especially one where you're going from like 4th to 2nd gear or something like that, which there's a corner like that at CMP. So I think this actually could be better. As long as it's got enough stopping power, which I suspect it will, I think it's actually going to be easier to modulate in that way because the smaller pistons in this for sure don't have that initial almost overload of braking force where it just clamps down on the brake disc. And I want to say something with this, you know, obviously pad selection is something to consider. I have a centered road racing pad in there that's got a shitload of initial bite. Probably could have improved that by trying different pad compounds, but I like to just kind of stick to a pad across all the stuff that I'm using. It just makes me feel like I know what I'm going to feel when I engage the lever. So that's just a personal thing. But back to this, I think it's going to work well. I'm excited to try it out. Definitely felt like it had the good stopping power that you would want from a system on a bike like this, but not a crazy amount of initial bite. Felt like it had nice feel, and it certainly looks great. I really love the way that caliper looks. I think it looks really aggressive and kind of advanced compared to the one that we had previously. And then when you consider, we'll have to go back and, well, you guys have been watching, you probably did the math, but the 300 grams or something that we've lost, somewhere in that neighborhood. That's a decent, yeah, I mean, what, 0.6 of a pound or something like that. So it's a decent amount of weight loss. So I'm pretty happy with that. But yeah, so I think we're pretty much done with this bike. We've got it all prepped. I'm gonna run scrub tires going out here because it's been a while, and I'm probably gonna be pretty slow at first, and I'm just gonna bring an extra set of wheels. And yeah, super excited to test this new stuff. Hopefully I can go quick enough to justify putting a GoPro on here and give you guys some onboard footage, and we'll see how it compares to the previous setup. All right, everybody, so we are at Carolina Motorsports Park doing a night ride, which I'll show you kind of what that looks like here, and testing out the new brake setup. And unfortunately, we're having a technical issue with it, and I'm not going to be able to give you guys any footage for this event because I'm having a problem where after about 2 laps, there's a large amount of brake drag, to the point where when I release the brake and open the throttle, my front tucks, because it's, as soon as the load comes off the front tire and shifts to the rear, there's this brake drag and it's causing the front tire to fold every time. So obviously that's a little sketchy, and you know, we came in, double checked everything. I even took a little bit of fluid out of the reservoir, and I think what's happening is basically the disc just simply isn't perfectly aligned in the caliper. And I knew it wasn't perfect at the shop, but we had to work with the disc spacers that we have to get that as close to possible, or as to perfect as possible. And it was within a tolerance that I thought would be acceptable, but I'm gonna reach out to the manufacturer of the caliper and ask what the minimum acceptable thickness, or excuse me, distance between the backing plate to the inner edge of the caliper is. Because I think what's happening is when it gets hot, the piston simply isn't able to retract enough on one side, and it's causing the pad to just essentially drag. And it's very noticeable. So after I had the tuck happen twice, we realigned everything, I pulled everything out, I pulled the fluid out, went back out, immediately happened again after about 2 laps, and when I pulled off the track into the dirt, it was dragging the front tire in the dirt. So it's, yeah, but that being said, before that happened, I could get a pretty good feel for how the brakes were gonna work. And once the pads got completely bedded in, which took first 3 or 4 laps of the first session, which is really odd because it didn't do it then. But anyway, the brakes started working pretty good. I'm pretty happy with them because they're not too strong initially. They come on in a way that I feel is very controllable. And then on to the linkage and shock setup, I made a small geometry change where I increased the length of the rear shock by about 3 mils. Pretty big change, but I just wanted to make a noticeable difference there. And I'm really happy with the way the bike steers right now. And it's a bummer because I was like, man, I think we might get some fast laps in today. And then the brake thing started happening. So I'm sorry this video is kind of a dud, but we're gonna keep at this. We're for sure gonna ride this bike more racing season's over. So I've got a little bit of free time now to focus on our shop projects. So next, we'll get this back to the shop. We're probably gonna make a custom disc spacer. We'll get that thing perfectly centered in the caliper, and we'll give this thing a second go. And I'll bring my backup braking system just in case. That way, and I'll probably pre-bleed it and everything. So if we've got a problem, boom, we'll just throw something else on and get back at it. So anyway, thank you guys for being patient. I'm really sorry we don't have any onboard footage, but stick with us. We're gonna have some more cool stuff coming up. All right, guys, so we're back at the shop, and again, you know, we had the brake issues, and I just want to reiterate that that in no way reflects upon that product. That's 100% my fault for not properly centering that stuff. And really, once I bedded those pads in, I should have had another close look at that, because with it being a floating disc and stuff like that, there's generally going to be kind of like a realignment. Now, I mean, I feel pretty confident with where we're at. That's as close to center as I feel I can really get it. It's pretty damn close. So if we have any issues with that, then we know there's something else going on, but I fully expect that it's going to work great. I mean, this is a system that's used in S1 GP. They make good stuff. So moving on, another upside, since we had a little bit of downtime and we've got another event coming up, we went ahead and put in the rake cups. We got a replacement set of those, and basically just used a little more heat on the frame and a little more time in the freezer with the cups to let them cool down fully. Here, and essentially what they've done is they've brought the head angle in about a degree, as I mentioned previously. And that impacts more than just head angle, because naturally that's going to affect ride height a little bit in the front, because, you know, you're taking the wheel that's pushed out further and bringing it in. That raises the front of the bike. So the bike is going to be taller. That being said, just for a baseline, like apples to apples comparison, I've made no other chassis adjustments. We very well may lower the bike or just the front or something like that, just to try to get the balance sort of how it was. But this has also had a pretty substantial impact on our wheelbase. Looking at the software I use, it's approximately a 20 millimeter reduction in wheelbase. So, you know, just literally the contact points from front to rear tire. So that's substantial. This bike is a lot shorter than, say, like a stock SMR right now. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Everything looks good. I also did a small gearing change, went up a tooth on the rear just because it felt like it would work better based on what I experienced at the track last time. So the whole bike is going to be a lot shorter with that. That's like 25 mils. And I'm really just excited to try this braking system out and see what these cups feel like. It may be better, maybe worse. Just be interesting to try. And I don't know, I've got a box over there somewhere, but just in case we have an issue, we got an extra brake line that's identical to this one and got everything mounted up and pre-bled. So we have our full previous braking system ready to just drop in on the bike. So worst case scenario, it's not going to end our event. Should we have an issue, again, don't expect to, but if we do, we've got something we can just throw on and boom, we're right back in action. We can test all of our other good Spider goodies. One other final point I just want to make is, you know, I mentioned that I was tucking the front a lot with the drag issue. That's how I've always crashed this bike. I've crashed this thing several times, and it's always the front tucking. And generally when it goes, by the time I feel what's happening, it's too far gone for me to save it. I just want to point out that I really have to credit, to at least some extent, the clamps that we put on here, these Spider clamps. I think they have a lot more feel, because twice I had really big moments on this where, I mean, the front tire was just gone, and I was able to feel it early enough that I was able to recover it. So, I mean, it sounds silly, but I really feel like those clamps gave me an edge in terms of crash recovery. So I'm really happy with that. And the foot pegs felt awesome. Didn't have my toe digging into the ground like I normally do. And then we had no contact whatsoever in terms of the foot peg touching the ground. So them being shorter in terms of distance away from the chassis, obviously they're so tall and further back. Ergos felt great. So really happy with that stuff. Can't wait to get back out there, and we'll for sure bring you guys a video as soon as we do that. So in the meantime, thank you so much for watching this and sticking with us. We really appreciate it. If you have any questions or anything you want us to go over, we're happy to do so. Just comment below. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next time.